Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. And How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Hello. Welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. Of course, I am your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined with Victor Pisano. Victor is a funny, serious, and thoughtful, hard-charging, and perhaps certifiable softball junkie. He's devoted to friends and family. He's also a successful businessman with 27 years of business experience, 17 years with 2 Fortune 500 companies. He's known for his strong business acumen and respect by peers across the nation. He has a colorful professional history that spans from Texas to LA and back to Texas again. A graduate of Texas A&M with a BA in communications, a minor in psychology. He's also a certified John Maxwell team speaker, coach, and trainer. Also runs the Charge Up Today website, which is blogs, podcasts, everything you name it with education, mentoring, leadership, and getting connected. Welcome to the show, Victor. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, Nate. Thank you very much for including me in this. I'm humbled to be a part of your show today.
Well, I'm excited to have you because this show, I started off with this idea like, hey, I wanted to talk about networking and building personal relationships because that's where I started seeing like, hey, the more resources I had, I was able to solve more problems. The more problems I was able to solve, I thought, I started become more valuable to the people I served. And I thought, the success kind of followed with it. So when I started podcasting, I was like, I don't know how to get connected. I don't know how to get on guests. I don't know how to do this. I got introduced to a prominent person we know is Chip Baker. And I got on his show and Chip did my show. And I didn't think too much about it. Like we had a connection and he's a great guy, a great guest. And all of a sudden he sends out this email like, hey, I want you to meet these 2 gals. Okay, yeah, I'll meet them. Anybody, like if you're cool, this is my rules. Like if you're cool and you introduce me to somebody, like I'm assuming like they're cool too. So like, yeah, I'm gonna get on the phone with the two gals. One's named Kristen Smelly, the other one's Mary Fran Bontempo, and they are just wild, full of energy, a million miles an hour. And they're like, hey, we're gonna do this surprise thing. We're gonna do a I don't know what you'd call it, like
Have a book launch party, wasn't it?
A surprise book launch party on their podcast show, and Chip didn't know we were coming on. That's where I met you, and I was like, geez, like everybody is so awesome. There's a ton of fun, and I think that's a really amazing way to just kind of like you're meeting people that just bring a ton of energy to the table, and like one person introduces you to another, who introduces you to another, and it just like snowballs and the amazing things that happen when you start just being open to connection. So I'm super excited because you lead a very interesting story.
But what's crazy is I could tell the same story about Chip, and there's probably 100 people who could do the same thing. He is so phenomenal at his craft, but he also is so good at feeling people out and saying, I think this person would be a good fit here. He doesn't just give names out. It's really cool the way he thinks and puts the time into it, because the people he's recommended for me, to your point, if you're cool, I have a feeling they're going to be pretty cool. And I'll get done with it. And I'm like, Chip, how do you know so many people? And he'll say, I started this 4 years ago, and it began with networking. I relied on a few friends, and it just grew and it grew and it grew. And I think that's the beauty of this whole thing is you start small and organically, it just happens. And you end up having the right guests instead of forced guests that really don't know what you're about.
Yeah. And what I find is like with the podcasting thing is like, oh, like, why do you want to be on a podcast? Like, do you want to share your message to the world and stuff like that? And what I find is like, you know what? I kind of quit caring about like who's listening and what I'm like the numbers are. Like am having a really cool conversation like with somebody I had probably never would have met under different circumstances. And this just keeps happening over and over again. And as you're right, like as you start building this momentum and you start doing it for a while, your network grows and you start like meeting more amazing people that can do more things for each other. So when you go like, hey, I'm looking for this kind of person to make a difference in my life, you're like, I know that person, like it's this person, you two got to meet. You start making these connections, and I think that's like where the real power is you're just able to just constantly play matchmaker. Like, you need to meet this person, you should meet that person, and just see where it goes. It's amazing.
Because I've always looked at it as, if I can just get one listener that identifies with one thing I've said, I don't care if there were 1,000 people that have viewed it. If I can make an impact on one just through my thoughts, my views, or even critical thinking, it's just an expression of myself when I do my podcasts, just like you. And you get comfortable with the conversation because somebody out there needs to hear it. They need somebody to elicit an emotion or a feeling or something. And I take pride in it. I was like you too. I was like, I wonder who's listening. I wonder, how long they listen. And then I realized, just enjoy yourself. Just do your thing. They'll come. The right ones will come, right?
Yeah. You'll find your tribe. You'll find the people that you're resonated with, and it'll make sense. So cool. Well, I like to ask my guests a question to kind of kickstart the conversation, which is this idea of luck. Like, do you believe luck exists? What's your take on luck?
Luck for me is the equivalent of the 15 to 18 hours a day I put in to my craft. Luck to me is an enormous amount of preparation. That way, anything that comes my way, I have a plan A, a plan B, or a plan C. Luck, I think, is just for Vegas. I look at luck and somebody relying upon luck as a person who's not prepared. I just don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work and preparation and being passionate about what you're doing. And if you do those things, you just happen to advance. You just happen to succeed. And it's not by chance. It's by plan. If you trust that process and follow, I don't think anybody successful who has put in an enormous amount of work at the end of the day says, boy, thank God for luck. They know how much work they put in. There's so many people you hear say, I'm an overnight sensation, and only took 20 years.
Yeah. Just which night
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm in agreement that level of effort that we put in, I think it opens doors, and you become you're making progress or whatever it is you're working on, but it also opens doors that you might not have had open for you at that time, and like you go, oh, well, you got a lucky break, you're in the right place at the right time. But it's like, no, I was working my butt off to be in that place, and it just so happened I was there enough times that the timing did become right, and I took advantage of it because I had prepped my mind to see the opportunity and I was ready to act on it. So I think your answer is very, very, very true. And people should work hard at what they're doing, and the luck will kind of find yourself. So I'd like to know a little bit about Charge Up Today, because we've chatted before. I know you're up to a lot of amazing, cool stuff, but I'd like you to explain a little bit about the cool stuff you are up to with Charge Up Today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Charge Up was actually born out of tremendous grief. And that's probably what surprises people the most is here it is based off of leadership and positivity. But it was me at my lowest moment. My life coach, my mentor, who was my father, passed away 3 years ago. And I was just in the wrong place. And I was trying to figure out how do I replace that, something that was such a void in my life. And I came to the realization that he had so many valuable lessons that he had taught me. He was the one who taught me about character and integrity. And as a professional businessman, he was always an entrepreneur. He just had a knack of speaking and putting leadership lessons in the most simple sentences. And he made such an impact on people that I realized I could take what he said and literally take the baton and carry his legacy. Because if I could be half the man he was, I would be the happiest person in the world when it's all said and done. So I started Charge Up about 2.5 years ago and focused on leadership, but I really wanted to appeal to the high school and college student athlete. I was involved in athletics growing up, and I feel like for a lot of the athletes, they've been given a gift. There's something they have, and at times they take it for granted. And once they understand that they have a gift, they have something special, and they're earning it through sacrifice and commitment and loyalty and hard work, they begin to realize that they have a leader within. And there is a common thought that leadership is title, rank, or authority, when in reality, it's simply influence. And if I can get the message across that your actions and your examples elicit the greatness out of others, it builds their psyche, it builds their self-worth. More importantly, it begins to empower them. So I started with high schools, and I have so many friends who are college coaches that I just began going to speak at colleges. And once that started, one coach would come listen, and it turned to 2 sports, 3 sports, 4 sports. And I've been incredibly blessed, close to 100 universities in the course of 2.5 years, speaking to about 5,000 student athletes. And the message is consistent. I mean, it really isn't anything scientific. It's just being vulnerable and humble enough to accept and understand who you are and what your role is, having the self-worth to execute it, and then eliciting the leader that you have to make an impact, do something bigger than yourself. And with the gift that they have, whether it's talent or skill, they'll always need mental training. Mm-hmm. So if I can provide them those tools, those mental tools to do the mental reps and prepare themselves, it's just one more tool in their toolbox. And it's the same stuff my father did in business with his employees, was the same stuff he did for my brother, my sister, and myself, was finding the right opportunities through guided discovery to give us another tool in our toolbox. And the journey's been incredible. It has been phenomenal and more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. It was just going to be a blog. And then from a blog, it went to a blog and a podcast. And then it was going to speak. It's like, Nate, I'm warning you now. Don't get too comfortable, because once you put it into gear and it grows, your message resonates with people, and they want to see you, and they want to hear it from you, and they want to ask questions. And that's my favorite part of it, is speaking live. Absolutely.
Well, I think it's amazing that you're doing this, because one, I've found, at least, and I've heard this before said, that being of service to other people or doing something good for somebody is like one of the most selfish things you can do, because it feels so good when you're helping other people. And it really does, because when I've chased in personal, like, hey, I want to do something for me, get a goal, check the box, it's on to the next thing. There's not this like, hey, wow, I did it, I finally made it. But when I make somebody else's life, I feel like an impact, a difference, it connect them to somebody that they wanted to do business with or help them out on something else, like it feels really, really good to me. And that's a feeling I haven't been able to replicate other ways. And I'm like, I got to do more of that. And you're doing that with very, I think, pivotal moments in kids' life, student athletes, high school and college. They're at, a lot of them are at probably the peak of their sports performance life, and they're probably going to be done after college. They're most likely not going to continue on. And so they're taking their skills that they learned of hard work, discipline, but somebody's going to come along and teach them, like, hey, here's some leadership skills, here's some mental things to think about. And those conversations, whether they're brief or for a moment, they like tend to stick, and they kind of guide the person in a little bit different direction where that maybe they had, and it maybe makes them think like, hey, I want to ask a few more questions, I want to see what I can serve, how I can do more, and I can take this leadership out of me and become the best human being I can possibly be, and be on this earth and influence more and more people. And I think having more people in those roles that just say, step up, say like, hey, I'm compelled to go out and share my message of leadership. It's going to resonate with people. It's going to make a difference. Some of the people are going to resonate with it, others aren't, but the ones that do, it can make a huge impact in their lives. And what if it changes them from, hey, maybe I was going to drop out of college. And if I dropped out of college, maybe I was going to get hang out with my old friends and weren't doing much and be up to no good. And my life would change. And all of a sudden I'm just kind of living a mediocre life. Or maybe it's taught me like, hey, I can continue my studies and I can take another challenge and I can move into a different direction. And maybe that just is enough to tip me to decide that I want to go to medical school, and I go to medical school and I invent something and I solve cancer. Like who knows where you have that level of impact, but it could be the slight difference. It's just tip somebody in the right direction to go make a huge impact on the rest of the world. It's crazy
I
stuff.
absolutely agree. It is, because you can't plan for the events to take a left or a right in life. That's the beauty of it, is once that obstacle hits, it's making a decision and having the confidence to do so. But, specifically with athletes, and it's a huge challenge today, is they base their value off their performance. So that's the first obstacle we have to get through, is their sport does not define them. And that's critical to your point. As they get past being a college athlete, it's very difficult for them to understand what their identity is, because think about it, they may have invested 10 to 15 years in that sport. And if they're at that college level, that means they've excelled and that sport has defined them. That's how people know them. That's where their successes come from. They're known. All of a sudden they get out of college, everything's not provided for them. They're used to schedule, discipline, regiment. That goes away. You become totally accountable. So I tell them, if I'm only teaching you skills for the field or the court, I'm not doing my job. Like, I don't want you to say, Victor's coming to talk about sports. This has to go beyond that. So you bring up a great point of what path can I have the self-confidence to take once this is done? And that's what I try to tell them is, hey, you probably are held back a little bit because of your sport in college, because you can only take so many hours. You're on the road a lot. And some of these guys get redshirted. Some of these girls get redshirted. They have a free year. Go pursue your master's. Like, go jump into something you really love now. Mm-hmm. And it's great to see those success stories when they separate from their sport and their true identity comes in. And they do. They make some incredible breakthrough. And they're so proud of themselves. That's the reward. And it's the reward for any coach, parent, teacher, just to see that expression of themselves. So I agree with you 100%, is having that confidence once you're done to change the world, go make an impact. Someone's got to do it. Why can't it be you?
Yeah, I love that with what was it, Russell Wilson, when he won the Super Bowl. Yeah. He talked about that. His dad would tell him, like, somebody's got to win the Super Bowl. Why can't it be you? And you go, you know what? Why can't it be me? Why can't I take this journey, this thing I want to do, and overcome it? And like, as a student athlete, you go, hey, look, you've shown that you can put your mind to it. You can work hard, put in the work. Like you said, it's not luck, it's work, it's hard work. You can already prove you could do that. Why don't you take that energy and devote it to a passion project that you want and just give it a go and see where it can take you. And you never know where those things happen. And if you stick to it, like you said, all of a sudden people resonate with you. They're falling in love with what your mission is, and they want to be around you. And they say, "We need some more of this," and it could turn into making huge impacts in tons of people's lives. So I'm sure the spider web out from you of the impacts you've had in people's life is like super huge. It's probably uncountable, unfathomable how big it's gotten, just because every little touch, you never know who that person interacted with that passed on the message or passed on the inspiration or just passed on like, hey, I've changed the direction I was heading in life. Now I'm in this other way and I've influenced people. So that's an amazing story that you've done.
Yeah, you like every time you get the opportunity to talk to someone, you've got to be intentional, because you don't know if that's a moment, if they're that vulnerable to ask the question, or they're in that certain, an area where they're experiencing fear, and you can push them past it just with a little bit of belief or encouragement. It may be a text or a phone call. You got to give it 100% attention. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned in these 3 years is, when somebody reaches out to you, stop what you're doing, because that's a vulnerable moment for them. They didn't want to do it in front of the team. Mm-hmm. That might be the moment of change for them. That may be them self-identifying and discovering a self-worth that they didn't have before. So it is so gratifying. No different than you speaking on a podcast. I mean, Nate, you could be talking about something that is relative to the guest you're talking to and have no clue that it's exactly what somebody who's watching needed to hear. You'll never know the impact. You'll never know the person. And that's the beauty of it, is now it's out there. It's out there for anybody. And somebody is going to hear it. Destiny happens here. I'm convinced of it. And it's just a rewarding feeling when you go to sleep knowing I have a voice, I have a platform, and I'm using it the best way possible. And it's rewarding. I know you feel the same way. We talked about that last week. It just feels right.
Well, you know what I was thinking when you said that about like taking the time when somebody reaches out to you to stop what you're doing and respond with intent, because like I can imagine times where I would be in school and they'd bring in a speaker and you'd be sitting there in front of a bunch of people, a bunch of your peers, and everybody's trying to be cool, be the cool guy and stuff like that. And the person says something that you resonated with, but you were too shy, too embarrassed to reach out and say, hey, I have a question. I want the answer. So you don't do it then. And then I'm thinking about like as you're like leaving the presentation, like your buddy makes like a comment like, hey, wasn't that just kind of a laugh, or isn't that the stupidest thing you ever heard? And you go, oh yeah, right. And so like your idea of even reaching out and asking and following up, that becomes like lower and lower to mention, like, you know what, maybe my idea is not that, maybe it's not as big a deal. Maybe I'm putting too much into what that person said. So if somebody actually reaches out to you, you have to be like, think about their shoes and be like, hey man, they had to go and do a lot of soul searching to just get up the courage to ask you this simple question that you're like, wow, I've heard this 1,000 times. I got the canned answer. Like, they are curious, they want to know, and you got to give them the time and devotion. Otherwise they're going to like, oh, every time I have curiosity, somebody says, ask me a question, and then they blow me off. Like, it's going to set the tone, like, to quit asking questions and quit being curious and maybe shut them down. I don't know. So I love that. Just
part of the challenge with them is, and I'll tell them right at the beginning, is my goal is for you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I need to get you out of that comfort zone. So somebody will text me, and the immediate response that I give them is, hey, that's a great question. You have time to call me? And it totally catches them off guard because, this generation, instant gratification. Can't you just text me back? And I'm like, no, like, this is connection. I want to connect. I want you to know that I'm coming from a genuine place. And then you're going to build trust into my answer. And you're going to know I'm being authentic. And you're going to know that I care more about you than just the sport. I want to know more about you as a person. That way I can give you the right answer. If I give you something that's scripted. It's not one size fits all. You're unique. I'm going to give you the answer that fits you. So it's a great position to put them in. Give me a call.
Yeah, well, it's also too because if I'm shy and nervous, I might not ask the real question I want to ask. I might ask a version of that question, but if it's just like, or it's the question that leads to an answer, which leads to a follow-up question, which is the real one I wanted to answer. That might not happen with a quick text message, but it will happen with a person, especially if you're on the giving end of the lesson and you say, hey, look, I'm going to devote the time it takes to have this conversation and ask the questions, have a conversation and see where it goes. That person's going to get the question that they wanted answered, I think. And that's hugely important.
Yeah, absolutely. You give them the time and the attention, and to your point, they get a little bit more comfortable, and they probably ask the question they wanted to ask on the third try.
Very true. Very true. So I want to ask you a question regarding the terms all in. What does going all in on an idea or an outcome mean to you?
Everything. All in. Those are two words that I use on a consistent basis. To me, all in is associated with pride and privilege. When you're all in, you have a sense of pride about what you're doing and you feel privileged for the opportunity to do it. So I tell teams all the time, there are a lot of good teams that win Super Bowls. There's a lot of good teams that win NBA titles. There's a lot of good teams that win the MLB championship, but great teams have a certain chemistry that separates them because it's such a fine line. And the irony that we're talking about being all in right after The Last Dance with Michael Jordan in the 10-part series, you got to see firsthand what all in is. All in is leadership at its most difficult points. All in is accepting criticism. All in is focusing on constant growth. All in is sacrificing for the greater good of something bigger than you. A lot of people think all in just means I agree and I'll play my role. All in is being able to recite the vision, know it by heart, and that is your fuel every day. You actually begin to visualize the success. You feel what it is going to be like to be the champion. You feel what it's going to be like to have a successful project. You already empower yourself to have that success because you've left no room in your brain for doubt. You've left no room for fear because you've covered everything along the way. You've played the scenario of every situation that can occur. See, if I'm not all in, I'm not going to take the time to imagine what failure feels like. If I'm not all in, I'm not going to take the time to not look at my role in a selfish position because I'm a part of a machine and my part is no more important than the other to have an outcome. I can't be all in if I don't trust the process of every single day. The people who just want the outcome, so many athletes walk in and what is your goal? Win conference. Okay, so it's okay if you lose every game, but as long as you win conference, like you got to focus on today, the moment. Mm-hmm. And being all into me is recognizing where your feet are, living in the moment, and being committed to the vision with pride and with privilege. That's all in. I love all in. I think success is determined on being all in.
Well, you definitely have a very powerful vision of what that means. And it's like, I get a lot of answers to it and everybody's got a little different take and yours is very purpose driven. It's very intentional. It's very much like looking at all things and how you fit into this role as a thing. And I think about sports analogies, Bill Belichick, and he always has the people say, do your job, or what are you guys looking forward to the playoffs? No, we're on to the next game. What does he say? On to Cincinnati. So it's always just like, it's exactly what's next. It's doing your job. It's not, hey, we're going to win championships. It's no, like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do my position the best I possibly can and not let anybody else down. That's a part of this mission. And when the why becomes bigger than yourself, it becomes easier to do that. And you have to ask yourself, am I willing to do what it takes to wake up every day and constantly grind it out? on the stuff that I don't care about because it has to get done for the mission. And if that mission is not as important to you as it is to everybody else, you're not going to be all in. You're going to find an excuse not to do it. It's kind of cold out today. I don't want to get up and go, I'm kind of tired, stayed up too late. Don't want to do my studies, don't want to keep reading my books. I don't want to do my work. It's Friday afternoon. Everybody else is out goofing off and I want to do that too. Like, people that are all in are going to say, nope, this is more important than the moment, and I'm going to stick to my guns and stick to the work.
It's interesting you mentioned Bill Belichick, because I tell this story to people. You've heard of the Patriot Way, right?
Yeah.
And everyone says it's the Patriot Way. In Bill Belichick's book, when they talk about the Patriot Way, it parallels with something that I tell teams, and that is successful teams coach themselves. Successful teams coach themselves. When Belichick is asked about the Patriot Way, he said, I had no clue what people meant. I thought they were just asking how we're doing things. And once he got to the core and understood the question, he realized that was Brady and some of the core members of that team who literally paved the road and built pretty high bumpers on both sides as curbs. And you went that way. And if you strayed off at any point, you realized really quick that you weren't a part of this organization. And it wasn't about talent. It was about will. It was about what you were willing to give. So it was crazy to me that this era of the Patriot Way became universal in how people describe a work ethic and how a culture of a team needs to work. But yet the head coach didn't even know what it was. But there's also a beauty in that, which shows how good he is at empowering his athletes to own the program. And that's what they did. He realized that the Patriot Way was actually built by a successful team coaching themselves. What a great example of being all in.
Yeah, that's definitely all in. So let's talk about the people that your message resonates the most with. I know you briefly talked about it being the student athlete, but like, who, when you're speaking, who are you envisioning that is hearing that voice? Who is that person that you're actually talking to?
When I speak, I look for the person who is willing to think outside the box. I'm looking for the person, I do speak to businesses still. My love and where the passion is with the student athletes, because they've got a sponge still and they're willing. But even if it's just a one-on-one conversation, if I can find somebody who just enjoys the challenge of thinking outside the box, who is looking for ways to make an impact, that's what I really want. I want to find somebody who realizes that they have the opportunity and they have the greatness within them to do something, and don't measure it by the outcome. Just measure it simply by the reward, to your point, of what happens on the other side. I speak to myself. I look at me when I was in high school sports, and I wonder myself, what was I missing? What were those elements that I wish I would have heard then that would have prepared me for college, that would have prepared me for life? Those are the lessons I try to teach. And that's why earlier I told you I really try to separate sport from the individual, because I want to talk to the individual. I don't want to talk to the athlete. So that's really what I'm looking for when I talk to somebody. And you have their attention when the distractions kind of go away and it gets quiet and they're just focused on you. And there's no feeling like that. That's when you have a gift and it's your obligation to serve others.
Yeah, I love that. The obligation, like that calling that, like, hey, it's not me to hold it inside me. That's a selfish way to do it. It's like somebody needs to hear your voice and you need to put it out there because they need to hear it and you need to not sit on it. So I love that.
Because what we do is a vulnerable thing. We put ourselves out there and we're exposing ourselves. So you and myself, we're out of our comfort zone some days. But I also know if I have something on my mind, it's my obligation to say it. Somebody's going to be listening. And that's the beauty of technology now. You couldn't have done this 20 years ago. It would have been a radio show. By seeing a person, like seeing their face, it's not the closest thing to a human connection, but it's closer than we've ever been. And it's the same drive that gets you up every day. And that's why you've got your calendar filled with people, because you're trying to provide something just to make an impact somewhere, somebody, be it today or a year down the road.
Yeah, for sure. Love it. Love it. So where can people find you if they want to get connected?
So on all social media, it's at Charge Up Today. And then the website's really easy, chargeuptoday.com. So all the information is there. And the great thing about it is on the website, we have hundreds of blogs and podcasts and videos. And then the YouTube channel, which is at Charge Up Today as well. We not only house the videos, but we do the podcasts as well. And then, of course, we're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Music, iHeartRadio, Libsyn, Stitcher, pretty much everywhere. And always willing. There's a little something for everybody. And I tell people that my podcasts and my blogs are not directed to student athletes. They're directed to leadership. That's the main pillar. So it can be applicable to somebody who is, in the boardroom, and it can be somebody in the locker room. It's the same message that I'm trying to get across. So I think some people are like put off and say, I think that's for athletes. Read, listen, and you'll realize it's life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I definitely encourage everybody to go over there. All those links will be in the show notes, so you can easily find it, get connected with Victor, see what he's got to say. And for me, I didn't play a lot of sport. I did some stuff in like junior high, but I didn't play a lot of sports in high school. Definitely didn't play in college, but I still resonate with sports leadership messages because I think that the lessons learned are easily relatable, but they transfer into real life things, which is working and building teams with people you're trying to accomplish big goals and big dreams with. So loved having you on. Great to connect again. It was always a pleasure chatting with you.
You just got to promise me now you repay the favor.
Of course.
So I need you on Charge Up, and I'm going to ask you some tough questions.
All right. I look forward to it.
Good. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Appreciate
it. We got to give Chip a shout out.
Yes, for sure. One for Chip.
We wouldn't even know each other.
Yeah, Chip's awesome. What does he say? Go get it.
Says, go get it.
Yes, he does.
Go get it.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.